Hey, aloha, love tribe. Welcome to Bitcoin for Peace. I have one of my dear, dear friends and co creators and mission driven humans on the show. This is Tomer Strolight. Welcome, Tomer.
Hi, Valerie. Very nice to be here.
Tomer is so amazing. He's the editor in chief at Swan Bitcoin. He's written here, where are we? Why Bitcoin, back up here, uh, created generational wealth, the film, and many other things. And we're going to talk about Bitcoin reuniting a deeply divided world today. His most recent article with Swan Bitcoin. Hey, Tomer, so good to see you.
It's
Yay.
nice to see you too. Nice to be here. Nice to talk about peace and love rather than divisiveness and war that are
Dude,
plaguing the world right now.
I know it's a tough one. Obviously, it's a lot going on planet Earth on in all 4,000 corners.
Right.
you know, tell why did you write this article, Tomer?
This article was sitting inside of me in a different way for a long period of time. I had noticed in lots of discussions over the last few years how people who are often on seemingly uh, irreconcilable sides of an issue, when they study Bitcoin, they actually agree that Bitcoin solves the problem that their irreconcilable differences are about. And I thought I was going to sit down and write an article that showed lots and lots of examples. That my favorite example of this is there. A couple of years ago, there were these Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse rooms. I can't remember which, or maybe both, where it was socialists versus capitalists, and they would come and have a debate with each other, but in the context of Bitcoin. And after attending two or three of these things, the thing that most blew me away was this. The socialists would come up and talk about how socialism is a cure-all for everything, and the capitalist would laugh at them and say, that's not socialism. Take a look at Venezuela, take a look at Argentina, take a look at the Soviet Union. That's socialism. And of course, the socialists would reply with, no, no, that's not real socialism. Real socialism has unfortunately never been tried anywhere. And the capitalist would laugh and say, I'm sorry to tell you that real socialism is the dystopia of communist regimes we've seen all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And then the socialists would turn the tables around and say, well, hold on a minute. Let's talk about capitalism, right? The capitalism, I see all this cronyism, I see all this corruption, I see all this stuff. And of course, what would the capitalists retort with? It's like, well, that's not real capitalism. Real capitalism has never been tried, except for perhaps this thing. And what they would both actually agree on is they would both agree, because they were informed about Bitcoin, that Bitcoin solves the problem. Right? Like the socialists would say, Bitcoin allows the workers to not be taken advantage of by the factory owners or the capitalist class, and the capitalist would say Bitcoin solves the problem. It prevents the government from taking advantage of the entrepreneur. This is oversimplifying these things, but what occurred to me is like neither capitalism nor socialism work in practice. They're both these theoretical ideals that everyone ends up saying, well, if only we could somehow get to the ideal, everything would be perfect, but we can never get to the ideal. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but largely, socialism goes off the rails much more quickly than attempted capitalism, but they both go off the rails, and we're living in a time when both are off the rails. So neither system works in practice. They're both good in theory, but a theory that's good in theory but not in practice is actually a theory that's bad in theory. And and yet they both agreed that Bitcoin, as it is, not some ideal that we'll get to some point in time in the future, Bitcoin as it is satisfies the main mission that they are after. And I've seen a lot of this in a lot of other categories. So I thought, I'm going to write a list of examples and show how Bitcoin is actually uniting people. But when I started to set the stage for it, like the fact that we live in a deeply divided world and what has caused the deep divisions, I discovered something else about Bitcoin as I was writing, and I guess we can get into it kind of right away. It's we get, first of all, if you're divided and disagree on something, it's very hard to work together. It's very hard to collaborate, and the things we tend to disagree about are the things that we can in fact change, or the things we can control. We don't disagree about the fact that the grass is green. We don't disagree about the length of a year, because we can't change those things. And this, I think, is where, to really distill it down to a narrow point, where Bitcoin comes in and says, I'm a thing that acts as money that can't be changed. And you realize that, you're just scrolling past this. Money is a great uniter of people, right? Two people who don't even speak the same language. Like if you're in a foreign country and you have a piece of paper money, or you have a credit card, you have money, and someone is making a food you desire, you don't need much communication. You can point at the thing and you can hand them the money, and they'll actually give you the thing. It's you've united with somebody to produce some work for you, to prepare food for you, who you don't even speak the same language as them. You're from a different part of the world, and you've had a peaceful interaction. You've united in a way that you both feel better about. He wanted money for this pizza, you wanted pizza for your money, you got what you're after. So you found unity, you found togetherness, and this, of course, scales up to a much, much greater scale than just one individual buying one thing from another individual's. Entire civilizations are built on this. The whole history of civilization has been a history of trade. The great trade routes of the Silk Road. Every great empire is not just an empire by violent conquest. It actually becomes an empire of significant trade. And it's money that allowed all these different cultures to be subsumed within what one would call a giant economy, or a peaceful international civilization, an empire. And the big problem that we have in the world today, why it's so deeply divided, is in part because the money is broken, because the money is in the control of people, and there's a constant battle for control over the money. A politician running for office is running to be in control of fiscal policy, of how to spend money that would otherwise not be spent in the way that they don't want to spend it. So we see politics destroyed by money, and divisiveness created. And what is politics today but divisiveness, trying to paint the other guy as the villain, supporting a corrupt regime, whereas you're going to be the politician who fixes everything and brings about abundance and everything else. And this is true across almost every aspect of our world. Everyone's trying to plea for the broken money that can be conjured out of thin air. So the fact that we can control fiat money, that we can change its supply, change its price, do all of these things, leads people to playing the game of trying to do that. And that becomes a divisive game. And so our civilization is divided by our money rather than united by money, which is what past civilizations have done. And this leads me to the point of how Bitcoin fixes this. And I think a lot of people keep questioning it's because it cannot be changed. And it's pointless to argue over the supply, right? Like nobody can run for office and say, I'm going to produce 2 million more Bitcoin out of thin air and give it to the people who vote for me and not the people who don't. It ends that game and allows us to reunite again through money in the way that we have before, and takes the teeth out of all of the different things that cause us to be divided because of broken money. So that's kind of the overarching explanation of what it is that is happening here, and why Bitcoin allows people who maybe as philosophically divided as capitalists and socialists to actually find unity in something that they both accept can't be changed, but has fair rules to begin with, and rules that they can live with. There you go. Oh, I can't hear you, Valerie.
I love now. Good.
Yes.
I love what you said just about, if you think about it, right? Like all politicians are doing is trying to get voted in so that they can have control of a certain budget or a certain ability to go make decisions with money. It's not necessarily like, yeah, I'm going to go get the consciousness of our humanity up level. They're out there looking for that power play. And then obviously if they can get close to the money printers and have access to that gives them even more power and more incentive to keep that corrupt Kraken system, as we like to call it in the cyber opera, alive. Like I was listening to a podcast with Peter McCormick and Jeff Booth and Alex Gladstein.
I just listened to the same one too.
It's great, right? And so Alex was talking about, the most violent thing you can do to a country and its people is to debase their currency, because every single one gets impacted versus here I'm going to go drop a bomb
Yeah.
on a couple locations. And so
Right.
that was something really interesting to me because it does, like, money touch, no matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your
Yeah.
religion is or what your political bend is or what color your skin is or who you pray to or don't pray to. You have to use some form of money
Yeah.
in on earth, and if you're in a system where you're using a violent form of money, you are going to be subject to um, that vibration, like living in that field, and so
Yeah.
how, to me, Bitcoin, obviously we know each other well, talking a lot about peace and how Bitcoin is hope and all this, like, can you help people get, like, why it's life and death to separate money from state, and why this can create a peaceful world, and why the current system of this marriage with money and state is causing so much violence?
Yeah, I've written other pieces that really talk about this, and how important it is that, like, it's a very unhealthy marriage, the marriage of state and money,
Yeah.
and it's a marriage that has happened numerous times throughout history, and it's always led to catastrophe. And what Bitcoin does is it declares unilaterally a divorce. Right? It says, "I am divorced from the state. I am money, and I'm divorced from the state." And so for people to start to choose it, they 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 change the nature of the state, because the marriage of the union of money and the state changed what the state was. It changed the state into this issuer of money, into this bestower of favor on some at the expense of others. That's
Mhm.
really what Alex Gladstein points out significantly in a lot of his talks, but certainly in that podcast you were just referring to. And it gets so powerful that there are people who never get any of the benefits. Right? The money is always only stealing from them. People in countries where there are corrupt regimes, and those countries are indebted to the IMF, who's indebted to the U.S. dollar regime. So it just, and we in the West have really benefited from it. So we've been blind to a degree of how much we're taking from others at the continued expense of their quality of life. But the positive thing is this divorce of money and the state means that the state has to do what it's meant to do in principle, which is to protect the rights of individuals,
Mhm.
help help enforce justice and proper things, rather than print money for themselves and ultimately become corrupted. And so it's this incorruptible nature, and there's no way to get Bitcoin to comply. There's no way to get Bitcoin to issue extra coins to some people, to undo the spending of some. Now, some people find this scary, but it's not nearly as scary and terrible as a system that's fundamentally corruptible and over the years has become deeply, deeply broken and deeply, deeply corrupted. So it's fixing all of these things. It's not, the other thing that I have to point out always is people say, well, it's not utopia. There's still going to be people who commit crimes. There's still going to be people who cheat each other. Yes, that, like, Bitcoin doesn't take away the ability to tell a lie. It doesn't take away the ability to commit fraud. It doesn't take away the ability to be incompetent or to get lazy after you make a promise to somebody and then not fulfill your promise.
Mhm.
But but there's a bigger problem, right? Like, and the fact that we don't solve every problem in the world doesn't mean we don't go ahead and solve the biggest problems that we can. And this huge problem we have is that our system of money and our system of government have both become corrupted by becoming intertwined with one another. Government became money. The whole purpose of government now is to write checks to do things that wouldn't be done by free people of their own choice, except for to do it by force. And that's, and so government's no longer about protecting people's free choice. It's about imposing other people's choice on, some people's choice on other people. That's not free choice. That's imposition. That's dictatorship. That's force. It's tyranny. It's all these terrible words that we've ascribed to government that we said we need to put a stop to, but then didn't put a stop to, right? They came creeping back. And we have this new solution to stop this. Like, the solution isn't elect somebody better, because every time we try to elect somebody better, we end up with somebody worse. I mean, there's something in the momentum of the broken money system married to government that prevents it from getting better. It just keeps getting worse and worse. I mean, occasionally there's some politician who gets elected who does something that's better, but it's so rare. And we just keep seeing in momentum, the inertia of corruption spreading and spreading and spreading to the point where we've got high inflation, we've got a working class, middle class that's being eroded, that has to work twice as hard for less wealth than it used to have. Just our civilization is eroding, even in the West, where we're taking advantage of other nations all over the world whose civilization never even got a chance to come together in an industrial way. So
I
there's a
think
lot that
about,
Bitcoin fixes.
the lyrics from the Who song, right? Meet the new boss, same as the
Same as
old
the old
boss,
boss. Yeah.
right? And it's just, it won't get fooled again. But that's what I think Bitcoin is offering, is this transparent
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for people to understand, like, hey, you can go look at all this stuff and see where these funds go. And it's, people have a misunderstanding of, oh, Bitcoin's for criminals, it's for terrorists and all this nonsense. And it's like the banking system is much more corrupt on every level.
Yeah, our attempt to, we've got a situation where the cure is far worse than the disease, right? Like, if the cure for money laundering is the fiat money system, in which you have bankers stealing and taking advantage and everybody indebted up to their eyeballs, and politicians are corrupted and wars are endless, it's like, what cure did we just anticipate, put in place for anti-money laundering? Like, we've created we've created something far, far worse and far more magnified than that which we were trying to limit. So things got out of control, and we're not recognizing it, right? Like, I think for many people, the inability to see this is part of the insidious nature of it, because we're told it's good, or we're told it's a solution. We
Mm.
thought we had it solved, and it turns out we didn't, right? Like, we thought Western liberal democracies and their powerful governments, hand in hand with some free markets, was going to be fine, but something went wrong repeatedly. And then, you have cronyism, you have people from private industry going into government, and vice versa, so that the division isn't there any longer. The powers of laws like the Patriot Act and others have just eroded the freedoms to the point where we're not nearly as free as we thought we were. We call them liberal democracies, but liberal has taken on a different meaning than liberty. Liberal is a particular political agenda from one side of things, and so we're nowhere near where we thought we would be, and we need a fix. And as Jeff Booth says, since we're citing him, you cannot fix the system from inside the system when the system is broken. You cannot find a politician to elect who will make everything go right again. It's too big an institution now, the government, for them to even find the 16 or 30 or 100 people who they'd need to replace with greater people than they are, who then would need to go and replace the millions of people who work for the government, who are on the pay of everything. So we need a different system, and Bitcoin looks to be the system, because it's incorruptible by individuals.
Well, so,
And
and the interesting part is, obviously it's sound money, but I just had an interview like an hour ago with Kasha and Shayla from the Bitcoin Film Fest and Open Dialogue Foundation, and they were talking also about the film Immutable Democracy, of what went on in Guatemala with the elections, and how they're using the
right,
blockchain to do something
yeah,
with timestamps. And there's another
yeah,
project, and I forget the name of it, but it's another thing
yeah.
about the fair elections and using Bitcoin. So I'm just curious, you know, I would love to see politicians go, yay, we want to embrace this so that we can have fair and open,
Yeah,
transparent elections. Do you see that even, like, realistically happening in this next election cycle? Like here in
not
the
in the
States? I
next
know you're in
elections.
Canada.
Yeah, not in the next election cycle, but I think as Bitcoin grows, and as this money that's divorced from the state grows, the state has to do what the state is supposed to do outside of that marriage, right? And so I think you will start to see, when politicians no longer have the ability to win elections by promising to print money out of thin air and give it to certain constituencies, politicians will have to earn their votes on the basis of impressing upon people that their lives will be better, not through a gift of money, but through living with principles that make their lives better. And I think that's what politics was meant to be when these liberal democracies were instantiated. And there were a lot of long-term principles that were held and protected, and people who were drawn to government were drawn for various reasons, but including the right, protecting and preserving the right principles. I just don't think any of today's major politicians come across in any significant way as being sincere. They feel like they're puppets, or they feel like they're cynics or narcissists. It just, they aren't great leaders. Now, we've seen a couple of potential standouts in Central and South America when things got so bad in a nation, right, where like you almost couldn't even describe the nation as civilized any longer. El Salvador had the highest murder rate in the world, and the entire economy of Argentina is in the state of ongoing hyperinflation and collapse and all these kinds of things. That's what seems to wake people up to take a leap on a politician like the ones that we see now in ruling those countries. But is it going to be the fix in Argentina? We don't yet know, right? And what's actually, I haven't been to El Salvador yet myself. I'm very curious to go, but there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of work to be done over here. I think we've harmed a whole generation, maybe 3 generations. It's just the intensity of the harm has gotten worse with each subsequent generation since fiat money became the form of money. And now when you have, Alex Svetsky has this article about Bitcoin. He says it'll take 3 generations to work its way in. I think fiat took 3 generations to work its way in, right? In the sense of completely eroding the values of hard work to earn money. And now we have a generation that thinks that money should be handed out for free.
We do.
And it's not their fault.
And it's this, and you're in Canada. Are they going to be doing like $2,000 UBI for anybody who wants it? I just saw that last night. Is that?
I saw it too. I'm very skeptical of news that I read as to whether it's true or not. But sooner or later, some of these things do.
Everybody's you go inflate the money. Oh, look, we're going to give you some more, and then we just inflated it again. Just what they did during COVID. So people don't understand like the toxicity of the fiat mindset is the throwaway mindset. It's the easy credit, give it to me now, pay later kind of thing. Like everything. We had even talked about this when we were, just talking about how easy it is to create, digital content, and just everything can be sort of not very proof of work mindset. It's just proof of hurry up and get it done and ship it, instead of let's take time, let's go deep dive, let's get in. And so it's a whole consciousness shift coming out of fiat and getting back into this, put your hours in kind of thing. And I think Bitcoiners possess that as an ethos, obviously.
This is where proof of work comes in, right? Like this notion that everything should be easy comes twofold. It comes, one, from all the great advances in industrial technology and electronic technology that makes things much easier to do. You don't have to lift bricks. You've got forklifts. You don't have to, there's machinery and equipment. But increasingly so, if you don't have to think to have an opinion, then your opinion can be removed from reality. And easy money, the promise of easy money, is fundamentally this disconnect between we have to do work and it might be hard in order to create great things and to have great things. Right? Like if nobody is doing any work, your money is not going to buy anything. And so if the government pays everybody to not work, nothing's going to be produced. And you can't buy anything when nothing is produced, no matter how much fiat money you have printed. That's really this danger. And the fact that people are naive to it and aren't able to call it out because the short-term temptation of receiving money from the government is such a great temptation. And there's also the game theory, like if I don't take the money, they're just going to give it to somebody else who's not going to work. So everyone's it's this broken game. It's this tragedy of the commons where the money is creating the tragedy. And this is why Bitcoin is so important. And we may have to go through, these hyperinflationary periods for these fiat currencies, even in the West, for people to say that was a scam. That was, that didn't work. Not working and getting money and thinking that I'm going to get someone else's work in exchange for doing no work myself. So this, the work ethic has to be reinstated and regrown. And it's not to say that nobody has it, but it's been a very confusing time to be alive between fiat money, which is money that's generated with no work, and real advances in productivity, which is more work done with less work. done with energy. The fix it, and Bitcoin really aligns these things because industrial technology uses energy to do work. So there's a recognition that the energy produces work, right? And that you need energy. Again, another thing that fiat has tried to mask away. Oh, we don't need gasoline, we don't need petrol, we don't need fossil fuels. Well, believe me, that's where all the work that you're getting done for cheap is coming from. And Bitcoin says the money is hard to produce as well. And what makes it hard to produce is it requires energy. It requires work to produce too, time and energy. So everything in the civilization that's powered by Bitcoin money is aligned, right, with reality. Work takes work to do. Productivity requires work. Money takes work to create. Money takes work to spend. All of these things are actually advantages rather than disadvantages. They may look on the surface, it's like, oh, you can't control the money supply. The money has got an expense associated with it to move. It takes time to move it. Yes, that makes the money just like anything else that's real in the real world. It takes real work to do. It costs energy to do it, and energy is the real basic unit of account that comes down to this. So the next article I'm working on is really trying to connect Bitcoin to work and seeing that human labor is very specialized. It's a special kind of work. A surgeon does surgical work. You and I don't know how to do surgical work, no matter how hard we try. And the surgeon needs the work of surgical instrument creators, which is a kind of work that the surgeon doesn't know how to do themselves. So there's all these human work is so much broader than when we look at the world of energy and say, well, there's kinetic energy and potential energy and electric energy, like 5 or 6 kinds of energy that we don't. But in human energy, there's millions and millions of different types of human energy, and you need to access them all. And the only way to access them all, to convert one form of energy, the kind you can expend. I'm a writer, so I can produce writing energy, thinking energy, or philosophical energy. And I need to exchange that for the surgeon's energy, and he needs to exchange that for and it's money that does that. Money is the motive power that converts my kind of energy into somebody else's kind of energy that I need. And so our civilization can only exist through money, and we need it to be able to act as a converter. And again, this is where something like Bitcoin, that is energy-based money, really shines as an example of the fact that money is not arbitrary. It's a measure of our work. It's a measure of our time, and Bitcoin is a measure of work and time. Remarkably interesting, yeah.
And how do you feel like, obviously on the horizon we've got CBDC, central bank digital currencies, for folks listening, and that's obviously a whole can of worms, in thinking of behavior modification, surveillance, privacy, how
Yeah.
to get people to, think you're doing them a favor by giving them, if they're going to get some UBI on their programmable, CBDCs. And so I think that's going to take it even a step twofold. This CBDCs, I think, are going to take it a step further with the not working and getting something. And then we've obviously got machines that are starting to do more thinking for us, all the AIs out there, which are exciting, right? But they're also, I think they're making us a little soggy in our intellectual capabilities. I think they're fun tools, but they can also be too crutchy. Like, I know my children right now, that's what they use to write papers. My son's like, "Hey mom, check this out." And I'm like, "So which did you use Chat GPT or a different one for this?" And he's like, "How'd you know?" And I'm like, "'Cause this is not you, buddy." Like, I know, but like, we've got a whole generation of people who can go put in 5, 10, 15, 20 words and then get a paper written, that's decent enough that they can go in and do some editing. And so what do you think about these two wonderful technologies, but how are they going to have long-term implications on our ability to think and speak up for ourselves, which will also push away the authoritarianism of a centralized authority?
Yeah, it's a really tough question because we have multiple disruptive technologies playing out simultaneously. And so the interplay between them, it's easy to say, well, here's the pros of the pros and cons of one technology, right? And I think you've kind of nailed it with large language models. The pro is they can construct grammatically correct, reasonably accurate essays upon an instruction, a
Mm-hmm.
single line prompt. The con is, in a sense, the same thing. They remove the requirement for problem solving from the individual. All right. And it's the same as any tool that you have that does work for you, you can say, well, it makes you physically weaker because you didn't have to do the physical work. And so, well, yes and no, right? Like, we're able to do things with industrial technology that no amount of human labor could ever do. No, we couldn't build a 60-story skyscraper with slaves, mindlessly doing work. We need the equipment. We haven't figured out what it is that we can do with large language models or other AI things that people can't do yet. We're still in the very earliest days, right? Like the earliest pieces of technology were just like slightly better, except not requiring the human to do the work, letting something else do the work. So it may be that there are skyscrapers of intellectual ability that can be constructed with AI that we are not able to construct without the benefit of AI. At the same time, we have to be careful that, and this is an individual thing. It's not something you can control for the whole universe, that you actually become lazy and stop using your mind. And I do think that's a danger,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's for the younger generation or, I see people are constantly pitching me on ways to produce content with with something that they've programmed, right? Told Chat GPT to program within itself. And like you with your son's essay, I read the first paragraph and I'm like, okay, this is not interesting. It was constructed with Chat GPT. It's a very useful tool for helping you create a better outline than you could on your own. It may be helpful in quite a few other things. It's a good thesaurus. It's a good rewriter. It's a good proofreader. Like, it does a lot of things that are handy and accelerate your productivity, but it doesn't come up with original ideas
Right.
and original insights. And that's what we need to dedicate our thoughtfulness to. It's also, it's a criticism of the education system that the assignments are assignments that don't require you to think original thoughts. And so it's easy to use ChatGPT to fulfill the requirements of the assignment, which are just regurgitate information that exists somewhere else in an organized and grammatically correct manner. It's important to be able to do that, but it's not really adding a lot of value to our civilization at this point in time. So we are confronted, and that's just one of these disruptive technologies that we discussed, right? We've got Bitcoin, we've got CBDCs, we've got all of the digital internet technologies that continue to eat the world. So it's a very uncertain time. What the future really looks like is a little bit hard to predict. I think there's two broad polar opposites of the future. There's one where this Bitcoin breakthrough, this decentralized breakthrough, this independence breakthrough succeeds, and succeeds for a large portion of the world's population. And so I think in that case, you have this renaissance of the human spirit, this renaissance of the human experience, right? Of just like what it means to be human and alive, and to not experience the world in exactly the same way as everybody else does, like a robot that's eating the same sandwich at the same time, watching the same TV show, that's like a mass market consumer, but is actually an individual consumer of the things that one finds truly valuable, and one charts their own path through this world. And then you've got this other view, which is a very homogenized view of the world, where everyone takes their share of what's produced by the centrally decided AI overlord, and who knows what that's like. It doesn't feel like a very human experience. I mean, I think I'd rather die than have to live in that state. But I might not know that I'd rather die. If I was living in that state, I might be so drugged and and idle and unthinking that I wouldn't know it. And that I think would be kind of this big tragedy for this whole planet, if humans evolved on it, and humans got to be here on it somehow, and then just became inhuman, idle, fat, lazy, bored, unthinking creatures, almost like plants, where there's so much beauty and potential in each and every single human being. And I mean, that for me is the message that I feel Bitcoin delivered to me. It's like everyone needs to find out who their own true self really is, and be that person and find a way to be that person as much as they possibly can through their lives. And that's not easy, right? Like, it's someone else telling you what you need to be, and it's the same as everybody else needs to be. That's an easy path, but it's also not rewarding. And it's not rewarding in the spiritual sense.
Yeah, it's definitely not rewarding in the spiritual sense. Well, I think about, in order for us to really develop into who we are individually
Mm-hmm.
in our own unique one self, that there's never going to be anybody like a Tomer or a Val ever again. It's just us
Right.
now, here forever. And like, if we don't have um something to push against a little bit, like,
Yeah.
we're gonna be puddles, if
Yeah.
everything's given to us, if everything's too easy. We think about our parenting styles, right? You and I
Yeah.
are both parents, and there's no one right or wrong way to parent, but if our kids don't have the opportunity to feel uncomfortable and feels like, whoa, I'm stretching, they're not going to have the chance to grow. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
I think as humans, our human spirits, even though it's like, oh, this is kind of scary, it's like, I don't think we would last as a species with everything being too easy and not something to push up against. I think we would go crazy. I think most of us
Mm-hmm.
would. And I think obviously our food supply, our media, our consumption model
Yeah.
currently is junk food. It's quick
Yeah.
dopamine hits. It's not nourishing. It's not nutrient dense, mentally,
Mm-hmm.
physically, or spiritually. And so I think by design, the system wants to keep us not in a state where we want to push against the system, and
Yeah.
it's a tough one, because none of us want to feel all this, oh, it's so painful, but it's like, if we don't have that push, something to push on, we're going to be we're not going to grow into these strong beings, these resilient
Yeah.
creatures,
Yeah.
and so and we won't be able to fully express ourselves because we're
Right.
too afraid, or we're
Yeah.
too tired, or too weak, or too
Yeah.
collapsed. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's why I think the expectation, when you have an expectation of an easy life, that corrupts your soul in making you unwilling and unable to confront challenges and to grow through confronting challenges. When you accept that there is going to be hardship in life, when hardship hits you, you deal with it, right? I mean, it may hurt and may be heartbreaking, and there's all sorts of things, but you come out of it a enriched being
Yeah,
through even the hardships. And you certainly don't, if you're living the easy life where everything is handed to you, you never experience the thrill and the joy of having accomplished something that was hard to do, or having overcome a hard obstacle to overcome, or being proud of what you've managed to think up and invent. And so there's a whole large array of some of the most positive human emotions that are never accessible to you if you're not confronted with challenge and difficulty, because it's
totally.
the overcoming of challenge and difficulty that is where your true sense of accomplishment, originality, pride come from. But if instead you just typed something into an AI algorithm and it did all the work, I mean, you might be delusionally proud that you did something there, but you didn't, right? You didn't really accomplish anything dramatic.
Yeah.
So
It's definitely, I think it's something to be on just to keep it on the radar of consciousness with our younger
mhm,
generations, and then the next younger generations that are gonna come up.
yeah, yeah,
It's, I always think about, I didn't get to know my grandfather, he died before I was born, but, I think about the grandfathers and the generations that are ahead of us, and it's like, they're always like, "Oh, this younger generation has got it
yeah,
so easy, they don't
yeah,
know, and la, la, la," and I feel like it's true in every generation, but it's like there's an exponential component to what we're dealing with right now, with how quick
right,
it is to make things so ridiculously easy, that it's like, well, why bother? I don't have to leave my house and grocery shop. They'll bring me Instacart. I don't have to prepare food. I just put it
yeah,
in the microwave for 2 seconds, or every
yeah,
little thing that takes away from us having to do this work is like,
yeah,
okay, if you're saving all that time, that's kick ass. Are you choosing to be creative and productive with
right,
all of that saved time? Or are you just creating more consumption of, I'm sitting around watching Netflix or playing video games or
yeah,
smoking weed and not paying attention? You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's like, it's great to save that time if you're going to translate it into something beautiful and productive and useful
Mhm.
and valuable for society to create a better world. But if you're just, I think, wasting the time to just,
I think
screw
it's sad.
around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I think it's sad, and it's also very tempting, right? It's like, oh, I had work to do. Now something can do the work for me. Now I can do nothing instead. And and that's an easy trap to fall into because nothing is so easy to figure out how to do. It's not there's nothing and there's something. It's like
Yeah.
something is there's a million billion different things you can do other than nothing. Which one of them are you going to do? How hard are you going to make it? What actually inspires you? How do you discover what inspires you? I think this is part of the challenge of living like kings, which is what we all kings and queens, which we all do in the West. We have all this free time on our hands that we can watch Netflix or
Mhm.
summon somebody to bring our groceries to us, summon this, summon that. Like it's all summonable rather than we have to do the work for it. And so
Mhm.
if we fall into that trap of not knowing what it is that we really love to do, then we just don't live our life doing what we love to do. It's a very simple conclusion. And so if you live your life not loving what you do, your life just isn't as satisfying, right? But finding and getting the gusto and finding people to help you to find it is hard because many other people are like, well, I'm going to do nothing instead of helping other people find out what they want to do with their lives. Right? And it's easy to counsel someone to guide them to say, take it easy, chill out, take the safe and well-traveled course, and the government will take care of you either way. There's something really wrong in that instruction because it's not saying seize the day, suck every bit of juice out of life that you possibly can. And so people think that life isn't special and extraordinary and magical, but it can be and it should be. At least that's my take.
I concur. Seize the day, carpe diem, baby.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to do right now every single day. I think,
Mm-hmm.
obviously you're a prolific writer and creator and somebody who I deeply admire on many levels, Tomer.
Yeah.
What would you say to young people right now who might be listening to this, who feel a little stuck and are concerned about, oh, AI is going to take my job. What do I do? I want to go make a difference. Like, what would you say to somebody who's listening, who could use a little word of wisdom
Yeah.
and support?
Yeah. I think, the most important person to make a difference, whose life you need to make a difference in is yours. And that's not a selfish statement. It's like there's nobody else to figure out what you love to do because only you experience the emotion of I love this or I hate this or I kind of like this or it feels right but it's not perfect. So it's only you who can do that. And so this sounds tropey, but you have to follow your heart. You have to surrender into what you think you want to do and don't worry about what other people say. Nobody's got good advice for you, right? If somebody who tells you go study to be a doctor, well, AI might replace doctors. Someone tells you go, study to be some other boring profession. That if you're passionate about healing people, if you're passionate about understanding medicine and science, then potentially go and study to be a doctor. But be careful because the education system that will teach you how to be a doctor is filled with all of these, make it simple, just write a prescription, send somebody to a specialist. Like, don't figure out the problem yourself. Don't solve the problem yourself. It's already, just pull solutions off the shelf. But if you can truly be passionate about what you're doing, you will find that life is satisfying for you and you're doing something to benefit the world because there are people coming to you for the benefits that you give them. So you get this satisfaction that you wouldn't get by just being an idle consumer of things. So find your passion. It's okay if it changes. It's okay if you go down a particular road and it doesn't satisfy you and your lesson is, well, that wasn't the thing. That's okay too. You don't have to be right about everything. Sometimes you'll go down a road and it'll be really, really satisfying and then suddenly it isn't. And that just means it's time to pivot, that you got everything that you could out of that thing. And you'll find that the next thing that you do, actually the things you learned in your experience of going down the first road still come in quite handy. So don't reject all your previous knowledge when you pivot and change direction. But for God's sake, find a direction and go. Just go.
I love it.
Don't.
And I think about Nelson Mandela. He has a quote. He's like, I never lose. I either win or I learn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like, go take a chance, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. And I think a lot of people get caught up in like, oh, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to make $1 million or whatever it
Right.
is? It's like, especially young people, it's like, obviously things are tough out there, but it's still like you have to get up every day and like, do you do something that makes you want to jump out of bed or makes you want
Mm-hmm.
to pull the covers over your head?
Yeah.
There's a big
Yeah.
difference, and
And
money
don't
can't
let
buy
yourself.
that energy of wanting to
Yeah.
get out of bed and be like, "Woohoo, I get to go do my jam today and be on my mission," whatever your mission
Mm-hmm.
might be. It's
Yeah.
super duper great words of wisdom, Tomer.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Don't let yourself be. The other thing I was saying, like, don't let yourself be judged by the standards that society has, right? Like, are you successful in the traditional sense, like with respect to money? Are you popular? Are you, whatever those traditional senses are? Like, find what really matters to you, and then if you do that thing, it doesn't matter that other people say that's a good thing or that's a bad thing. Like when you find your thing, you're happy. You're happy doing your thing, and you can find satisfaction that isn't envy driven, right? Like all of these pushes by everyone to be financially successful is a great example is one where everyone's looking at everybody else, not saying what do I need, but what do they have, and why don't I have as much as they
Right.
have? So
How do I
it's
measure up?
second-handed. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
second-handed rather than internal. And so look within. The answers are within. And I wrote one piece that if anyone's listening to this and interested in it, that really concretizes this, is a short story called the Lesson of the Golden Teacher. And
Yeah.
it's a story about all sorts of people being able to look inside themselves and realize what they truly want to do rather than being told by their teachers and society what they want to do. If you Google the Lesson of the Golden Teacher, Tomer Strolight, you'll find it. It's on Medium.
And can I say about what that might also be about?
Sure.
Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, that's okay.
Or, just, um, you and I obviously talk a lot about, plant medicine and healing journeys and
Yeah.
transformative, experiences through this, and so, uh, and I know we share a lot of views on just the power of the plants, and the power
Right.
of psychedelics and medicine. What do you see on the horizon with a lot of the legalization and
Mm.
everything with, like, mushrooms, here in the States? I mean,
Yeah.
something's going on in Canada, right? Can you get mushrooms at, like, a dispensary?
Uh, you can order them online and not have any issues, as far as I'm aware.
Mm.
This is not advice for people. This is just my awareness of things. There's websites that will deliver them to you, so they're available, if not quite legal yet. But I think that they're not being pursued in any kind of aggressive way by by the government. Marijuana is legal everywhere in Canada. The government delivers it to your house here where I live if you
Wow.
order it. So it's a government-run store, and
30 minutes or
you
less, Domino's
you can
bong
order same
delivery.
day. You can get same day delivery if
Oh my
you're
god.
if you're in a hurry. But there's dispensaries on every corner. What used to be coffee shops now are mostly weed shops, I guess. So it's widely available here. Again, I don't know exactly what impact that's having. I think to your broader question, plant medicine is is a new path that integrates um, mental health, physical health,
Mhm.
nutrition, and and potentially all sorts of other things like self discovery
Mhm.
and self awareness. And so for some people, this has been hugely helpful and eye opening or fact revealing or direction setting. And for other people, it potentially is ruinous. People who become dependent on chemicals or think that chemicals provide them with the answers to everything always may not have a particularly good go of things. So this is stuff to be responsible with, just like everything else we're talking about, right? There's
Mhm.
work, there's responsibility, there's self testing, there's learning about yourself, and being truthful to yourself about what experiences you're having if you're having experiences with these types of medicines, plants.
Totally. And I know we're running on time here. I want to ask two more questions, like one still about this, but then another we'll talk
Sure.
about Swan and what's going on at Swan and all the good stuff you guys are up to. But I want to tag on the end of your comment though. I got to interview Ioni Appelberg,
Yeah.
Ioni, and we were talking
Yeah.
about the white shaman, because he's a medical doctor and talking about plant medicine and how Western medicine is
Mhm.
starting to at least wake up more, to the understanding that, MDMA or mushrooms
Yeah.
are being used for end of life care and trauma. And, obviously Ibogaine, I did Ibogaine for addiction. And so there's a lot of transformational things that are starting to move forward. And thank goodness that some mainstream medicine is starting to catch on, to
Yeah.
these tools. How has, what's the biggest aha that you've had from, your adventures, experiences, your healing with medicine, with plant
Right.
medicine, or
Like,
any of
oh,
these medicines? It doesn't have to be plant.
yeah. I mean, for me, the fact that I'm a writer now
Mm,
is something that came from the result. Like, I was always a writer, but I
good.
didn't know it. And plant medicine showed me that at a time when I thought I was a failed businessman, that I was
Mm.
actually a gifted writer, and that was, and that gave me the courage and the wherewithal to start writing, like the book that you've got
The Why
behind
Bitcoin
you.
book.
Yeah,
Have you
and
looking over my shoulder next to
right,
Alex and,
right,
and
and
Gigi and
yeah,
Knut.
yeah. And it was amazing. Like, I went through my whole life writing, business memos and this and that and the other, presentations, business cases, philosophical diatribes, but doing it as a businessman. And then when my business career derailed, and in part because of, well, for lots of reasons, all these kind of fiat and lockdown reasons, um, I started doing a little bit of writing, and I started reflecting on it while under the influence of some of this plant medicine. And it just gave me this realization of the talent that I actually had, that I could then dedicate my energy to. And so, mixing my energy and my talent together, things things are working out. And they're not working out by the success measures that I would have had of myself as a businessman. I'm
Mhm.
not getting lots of options in a company. I'm not the president of a company. Like, these were lofty goals as a businessman, but I'm very satisfied as a content creator, a creative individual, uh, who is bringing ideas to people and helping share ideas, and doing so in a way through a craft of communication. So I'm judging myself by different standards on a different talent that I have, and it feels actually a lot more natural. It's not that it doesn't come with its own pains, right? It's like, more, being a very successful businessman was very rewarding financially compared to being a writer, but there's a different reward system here, and I can't bring myself to being a pure businessman ever again. I don't think. It's no longer. I've shed that part of me. It's no longer who I am. And yet I used to think that, like, I would introduce myself with my job title afterwards for the better part of a decade. So that's that's one example there.
I
Of
love it. Well, it sounds like, when we have an identity shift, and
Yeah.
we want to resonate with, this new identity, right? Or this, evolved identity, it makes it easier to step in and take risks and do the things that might seem a little intimidating. I always
Hmm.
think about like, eh, when I'm just Val, I'm like, "Oh, I'm Val," but if I'm Valerie, the vibe goddess on stage and I'm
Right.
DJing, I get to step into that persona and
Yeah.
deliver an experience and connect with the audience in a way that
Hmm.
Val could, but it wouldn't be quite as
Right.
lit up, and so there's
Yeah.
a permission slip there,
Yeah.
once you say, "Hey, I'm a writer, or I was a CEO, or I was a
Yeah.
founder," or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that this iteration of your identity,
Yeah.
evolution will and, go on, it's like, then you can wear it. It's like a cloak,
Yes. Yep.
and you're like, "Do, do, do, here I go," and
Yeah.
so you get to deliver more potent results, and I think psychedelics and plant medicine, they take away those inhibitions and the fear and the
Yeah.
old programming that says, "Who are you to be a writer?" or "Who are
Right.
you to be a DJ?" or "Who are
Yeah.
you?" And it's
Right.
like, I'm
Right.
Tomer, I'm Val,
Yeah.
and so I think there's something really powerful to be said as collaborators. Like, to me, they're
Hmm.
collaborators on our transformational journey. You don't want to use
Hmm.
them all the time, but I think it's certainly impacted who I am and how I am on planet Earth
Right.
here. So I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So okay. So next question. I know we got to hustle. Uh, oh God, yeah. Super quick. Sorry. It's too. Do you have 2 minutes stop?
Yeah, I do have
Yeah.
to stop in 2 minutes, so
Okay. Cool.
let's
Well,
let's make it quick.
okay, so okay, Swan Bitcoin, what's happening with Swan? How can people get a hold of you over there? And, a closing
Sure.
thought for the audience
Yeah.
here.
You know, I always feel a little bit uncomfortable plugging a company, but because I'm not a businessman anymore. But I think Swan is in a sense more than a company. It's part of the mission of
Yeah.
Bitcoin, and really the mission of the company is do what's right for Bitcoin and for Bitcoiners, and and work hard at that. And so it's like, and working hard is, I'll just tie in all the stuff that we were talking about before in this podcast. Working hard isn't easy. That's almost the definition of hard is not easy, and 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 there's a lot that needs to be done. Right, doesn't come to us in a finished state, fully adopted. There's a lot of work that needs to be done down a lot of different paths, and I'm really excited. Swan is taking on as many of the things as it can possibly get under its belt and bringing together mission-driven people to help succeed with this mission. So I'm just like, almost every single day that I'm interacting with my colleagues over there, really, really thrilled to be part of it, because this is something that I wanted more than anything else. I didn't want to be a businessman. I wanted to work in Bitcoin. And I thought that was through, bringing certain business skills of mine. But I'm getting to work in Bitcoin in this philosophical nature by producing content and collaborating with colleagues who are deeply involved in building things in Bitcoin, and it's thrilling. There's just I don't want to say endless, but there's a long pipeline of things that are being worked on and delivered by the company, and they're all super exciting and on mission. Right, we're not resisting or fighting the direction of Bitcoin. It's decentralized nature. It's random and chaotic growth patterns, and just surrendering and going with the flow. Like, is tremendous. So it's really nice to be able to ride this wave.
Yeah, I love it. And I know Swan is kicking so much booty. I love it. I'm so grateful that all the work you're all out there doing, all the education and just commitment to the mission. It's a big
Yeah,
deal, and I'm really, really grateful to get to, have gotten to go to Pacific Bitcoin a couple of times. Oh my
yeah,
gosh, what an honor. And I can't wait to go again and keep supporting you guys. So it's great
tremendous.
stuff. Um, all right, Tomer, where can everybody find you?
Um, well, swan.com/blog is where my latest articles are. I tend to do Twitter Spaces, so if you follow me on Twitter, I tend to tweet. I try to tweet once a day, just some thought about Bitcoin. So at Tomer Strolight on Twitter. There you go. You've got it up on the screen. That's probably the best place to follow me and keep tabs on what I'm up to. I'll try to keep everyone up to date on that.
Yay. All right, final word.
Be yourself.
Yes. Everyone else
Those
is
two
taking.
words. Yeah, yeah.
I love it. So good. It's so good to see you, my friend. I miss you and I'm grateful for you. And it's Thankful
Likewise.
Thursday. So I'm thankful for
All right.
Tomer coming on the show here and
The
doing this
feeling is
live
mutual.
stream. Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, everybody go check out Tomer Strolight on X, Twitter, and check out Swan if you guys want to get some Bitcoin and dollar cost in or get your IRA set up. Swan's going to help you out. And until next time, my friends, stay cool. And thanks for tuning in to Bitcoin for Peace, and peace, love, and warm aloha.
Peace.